تيست ماي تيست.
بالنسبه للاي تي، هل مدام خديجه في اليو ان دي بي معانا؟ ها؟ معانا؟ طيب يعني I start by
Shall we start?
أرجوك حطها على الخط وأنا
أنا موجود على الخط إن شاء الله.
أهلا 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 أهلا
أهلا بك.
أهلا.
Can we start?
Well, yes, I will. I don't need to introduce you. You were with us in the last session, so please, you are in control of this session. So
I hope so.
Yeah, you are.
I hope so.
You are. You are. So please go ahead.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's my
recording in progress.
It's my great pleasure to welcome you to this side event on biodiversity, ecosystem restoration, and food system, following today's adoption of the Union for the Mediterranean Ministerial Declaration on Environment and Climate Change by its 42 member countries. The United Nations Development Programme, UNDP, is pleased to be co-hosting and co-organizing this event in partnership with the UFM. And on behalf of both of us, I would like to thank you and to thank you all for being here, but to thank the government of Egypt for hosting us and welcome all of you present in person and online with us here today. Today's side event aims at showcasing the main ongoing processes, strategies, initiatives, and financial packages that can be synchronized to ensure convergence for the benefit of the region on the road to the new post-2020 global framework on biodiversity set to be enacted at the UN Biodiversity COP15 conference, to climate change COP26, the UN Decade for Ecosystem Restoration, and the outcomes of the recent UN Food System Summit. As today's interventions will highlight, stabilizing and restoring ecosystems is a critical element, actually the very essence for achieving a just transition towards a greener, bluer, and circular economy where food systems play a key role in ensuring poverty reduction, food security, and well-being within the 2020 agenda for the Mediterranean region, more specifically in our region, as many countries are highly dependent on food imports. Only by keeping development within planetary boundaries will humanity be able to tackle these issues. UNDP places planetary emergency as its top priority, and guided by the new strategic plan 2022-2025, we aim to help countries put nature and environment at the heart of their national economies and development planning. Today, we implement as UNDP 300 million of grant initiatives in countries across the Arab region in different topics, including on biodiversity and land degradation. As we move towards the implementation agenda under the United Nations Food System Summit, Biodiversity COP15 and Climate COP26, UNDP stands ready to further expand support to member states in the region in partnership with UFM, EU, UNEP, FAO, bilateral donors, IFI, and all kinds of stakeholders that are deeply committed to address the specific challenges of the region. Only through such partnership, we can jointly advance innovative policy solutions, scale up nature positive finance by public and private sectors, and catalyze new nature-based development pathways. I very much look forward to the rich contribution from our esteemed keynote speakers and their valuable insight. I'm sorry, I will conclude by kindly reminding each one of you, the speakers, that you have only 5 minutes time frame for your remarks. With this, it's my great pleasure to invite our opening speaker to frame our discussion, Her Excellency Dr. Yasmin Fouad, Minister of Environment of Egypt and President of Biodiversity COP14. Excellency, with your commitment and the commitment of Egypt, you drive us by example. Excellency, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Dr. Khalda. Excellencies, dear ministers and speakers and panelists, it's really a pleasure and honor to have you all here in Egypt, whether physically or participating virtually in this session. In fact, this may be the last session that Egypt will be hosting on the biodiversity while Egypt is the president of the CBD COP14. But let me, at the outset, express our thanks and appreciation to the UFM and to the excellent co-presidency that had put ahead of us today not only a condensed agenda that we spoke about in the morning, but two important sessions inside events. One, the first one on green investment, and the other one on the biological diversity, the green investment and the climate change, the climate action and ambition, and the biodiversity, and how it would look like post-2020 biodiversity framework. Two very critical challenges at the time when the world is suffering from the pandemic, where we cannot go back and do business as usual, but we need to build back better. At the outset, I would like to acknowledge, in our capacity as the CBD COP14 president, the enormous effort that the SUBSTA and SBI and open-ended working group on the post-2020 global biodiversity framework and valuable contributions of the partners, of the negotiators and the experts from the parties to the convention had exerted at a very critical time, at a time when we were not meeting face-to-face, and we decided to come up with a target and a post-2020 framework biodiversity. So my thanks and appreciation to them. We have come up through the third working group with the first draft of the global framework and listened to the views and ideas and remarks from all parties. And this will be further resumed next January when there will be more ample time for the adoption of the framework and preparation of the second phase of the CBD COP15. So COP15 will take place like mid that month with the first phase, and Egypt will hand over to China the presidency, and then the second phase will be in January. The post-2020 framework is meant to include all aspects of misuse and unsustainable practices of the use of biodiversity and ecosystem component. We agreed that it should be clear, innovative, effective, and inclusive. And this can be achieved by including a set of clear, refined, implementable, quantifiable, and transparent targets that would ensure transformation into sustainability in achieving the global sustainable development goals. In order to do that, and in order to set the scene for this session and hear your views, I would like to propose some of the ideas that maybe would shape up this discussion. How can we make that framework and enable it to be towards effective implementation? How to set a clear, ambitious goals and targets, and not only ambitious, but implementable and realistic and doable. How to address that within the national context of each country, given the national circumstances that should be taken into consideration, and a different path of development, not only among countries, but within the same country, within the same coastal zone. For an example, how to ensure inclusivity, and how to ensure much more the synergies between that biodiversity framework and ecosystem-based approach and other synergies with other conventions, because that's very critical. The world does not have enough finance to overcome all the environmental challenges, and it is not wise at all that we think separately, because the whole idea of sustainability It came to birth in 1992 when the 3 Rio conventions were born together. So it does not make sense that we separate them and we don't have sufficient fund and then we come and say we're not able to achieve a lot. No, let's go back to nature. Let's go back that they are interconnected and should work together. We shouldn't see the Global Biodiversity Framework as a new global strategy for achieving the CBD goals and objectives. Rather, to go back and see it as a global and integrated approach for protecting and conserving the biodiversity by addressing the synergies between the biodiversity, land degradation, and climate change. Because simply, without biodiversity, we will not have the shelter, we will not have the food, we will not have the interaction between the different species. Simply will not have the nature, will not have life on Earth. As much as climate change is a risk and a crisis and a disaster that's alarming to all our people, biodiversity is as much importance and equal to the climate change. Finally, I would like to leave this session with looking further into perspective. How can we enhance that framework? What can we add to that process? What did we miss in that framework? And how can we further really innovate ideas that would bring the people, the land, the water, and all kinds of species connected together in harmony. Otherwise, without being in harmony with nature, nature does not need us. It has proven so during the pandemic, and we deadly need nature to be able to continue and survive with our future generations. And thank you once again for being and accepting to be here in Egypt and looking forward to successful deliberations and results. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for your inspiring remarks to open this side event. I would like now to start the keynote segment of the side event, and I invite our keynote speakers to the podium. To commence this session, I'd have the distinct pleasure to ask His Excellency, and excuse the pronunciation in advance, Mr. Virginius Sinkevicius, EU Commissioner for Environment, Oceans and Fisheries, to provide your keynote remarks. The floor is yours, and apologies again for the mispronunciation of your name.
Thank you very much, Minister Fuad. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. May I start by thanking Minister Fuad for her inspiring words, and then Egypt and the UFM Secretariat and UNEP for organizing this event to shine a spotlight on the state of biodiversity in the region. And may I also convey the sincere apologies of Commissioner Sinkevicius for not being able to take part in this event. He asked me to participate on his behalf and to convey some of the messages he wanted to share. And the first of these messages, which in a way needs no repetition, but also cannot be said often enough. The world's biodiversity is in a critical state, under pressure of climate change, unsustainable agriculture, soil degradation, land take, invasive alien species, pollution. And the conclusions of work undertaken, amongst others, by UNEP MAP and the European Environment Agency in the region are clear as to the severity of the threat to biodiversity in the Mediterranean Sea, with over 40% of top predators, including marine mammals, lost in the last 50 years alone. More than 1,000 non-indigenous marine species recorded, and less than 0.1% of the sea covered by no-go, no-take, or no fishing zones. Similarly, the signs are clear that the nature crisis and the climate crisis are intrinsically linked. We won't be able to tackle climate change without a healthy biodiversity, and vice versa. And Minister Fuad has expressed this very clearly and much more eloquently than I ever could. It is an understatement to say that this meeting today takes place at a key time just before the official launch of the Convention on Biological Diversity, COP15, in China next week, and then the climate change COP in Glasgow a few weeks later. In the light of the challenge to our nature and biodiversity, and thus to our well-being and prosperity, we need to see an ambitious global biodiversity framework agreed at COP15. a Paris-style agreement committing countries to concerted action to hold biodiversity with measurable goals and targets, and a strong mechanism for monitoring, reporting, and implementation. COP15 realized the multiple synergies between the climate and biodiversity processes. And I think we all must thank Minister Ford for focusing on this lead in her current position as COP president. It is clear that when we talk about action to address climate change, nature solutions need to be at the forefront. At EU level, the European Green Deal sets out principles for our sustainable development. It's intended to guide our economic recovery, building more inclusive and more resilient societies. It's intended to ensure well-being of all within planetary boundaries. And a key element of the Green Deal, the EU's biodiversity strategy for 2030, sets out our commitment to put nature at the center of our policy and decision-making. It includes targets on nature restoration for protected areas. It is intended to reflect the ambitions which we hope the global biodiversity framework will put in place, including the target for protecting 30% of land and sea, allowing also for broader area-based conservation measures. In the Mediterranean context, 30% target requires an expansion of the current system of marine protected areas. Separately, a few months ago, the Commission adopted the Zero Pollution Action, which aims to address the link between pollution, including air pollution from industrial emissions and shipping, and biodiversity loss. We have adopted legislation to tackle the impact of plastic waste and marine litter on marine biodiversity, in particular through the reduction and prohibition of single-use plastics. In conclusion, I would just like to say that the transboundary nature of the threat of biodiversity means that coordinated action is needed for the measures to be effective, whether it is reducing pollution in the region or tackling invasive alien species. The declaration adopted earlier today is a good start, but it must be more than words on paper. So I think the key message that Commissioner Sinkevičius would have brought to you would be really to now build on this declaration, use our cooperation structures already in place to restore and protect biodiversity in the shared sea and around its shores, and to be jointly strong advocates for a strong new global biodiversity framework. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your intervention on behalf of the Commissioner. And with this, my pleasure is to call Mr. Nabil Masarwa, Minister of Environment of Jordan. Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. I apologize on behalf of His Excellency, the Minister, for not being able to attend this session. So I will deliver his speech on his behalf in Arabic. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أصحاب السعادة، السيدات والسادة، أود في البداية أن أرحب بجميع المشاركين في هذا الاجتماع حول التنوع الحيوي والحفاظ على النظام البيئي والنظم الغذائية. منذ الاجتماع الوزاري الأول حول البيئة والتغير المناخي في عام 2014 تم الاتفاق على أن الاستهلاك والإنتاج المستدامين وكفاءة الموارد كنهج متوسطي رئيسي للاستدامة والاقتصاد الأخضر. إن الاستهلاك والإنتاج المستدامين يعنيان تحقيق المزيد والأفضل بأقل الموارد، ويتعلق أيضاً بدمج الحفاظ على البيئة ضمن النمو الاقتصادي وزيادة كفاءة الموارد وتعزيز أنماط الحياة المستدامة. إن أنماط الاستهلاك والإنتاج الحالية غير المستدامة تقوض بالفعل قدرة النظم البيئية على التجديد وتقديم الخدمات للصناعات والمجتمعات التي تعتمد عليها. إن التغيير في أنماط الاستهلاك يتطلب مشاركة نشطة من المواطنين، وعليه يعد التثقيف والتوعية والوصول إلى المعلومات حول الأبعاد المختلفة للتنمية المستدامة، بما في ذلك التنوع البيولوجي والنظام البيئي من المتطلبات الأساسية لتغيير خيارات الاستهلاك وأنماط الحياة. أصحاب السعادة، السيدات والسادة، أود هنا أن أؤكد على ما جاء في الإعلان الوزاري حول البيئة والعمل المناخي الذي تم تبنيه هذا اليوم، وعلى ضرورة قيام دول الاتحاد من أجل المتوسط بصياغة السياسات واتخاذ الإجراءات اللازمة للانتقال إلى اقتصاد دائري وأخضر وشامل يتسم بالكفاءة من حيث استخدام الموارد وتطبيق الإدارة المستدامة والمتكاملة للموارد الطبيعية، فضلاً عن اعتماد أنماط الاستهلاك والإنتاج المستدامين. كل ذلك من شأنه أن يدعم جهودنا في العمل المناخي على المستويين الوطني والعالمي والإقليمي بالتزاماتنا تجاه اتفاقية باريس، إضافة إلى ذلك صياغة سياسات لحماية وإدارة واستعادة التنوع الحيوي، ولا سيما دعم تنفيذ اتفاقية التنوع الحيوي والتحضيرات لاعتماد إطار عالمي طموح للتنوع البيولوجي لما بعد العام 2020. ويشمل ذلك إدماج التنوع البيولوجي في سياسات قطاعات أخرى، وإنشاء نظام للمناطق المحمية طموح وشامل إيكولوجياً يدار بشكل جيد، بالإضافة إلى تنفيذ الحلول القائمة على الطبيعة والطرق المعتمدة على النظام الإيكولوجي كجزء أساسي من الإجراءات التي تتعامل مع تغير المناخ. أصحاب السعادة السيدات والسادة، إن التعاون الإقليمي أمر بالغ الأهمية لتعزيز الإجراءات التحويلية نحو أنظمة غذائية أكثر استدامة في البحر الأبيض المتوسط، مع إشراك المواطنين والمجتمعات من أجل زيادة القدرة على التكيف مع تغير المناخ واتباع أنظمة غذاء أكثر صحية. وهذا يستلزم استثمارات في البحث وبناء القدرات من أجل ممارسات أكثر استدامة من قبل المنتجين ورجال الأعمال والمستهلكين، مما يضيف قيمة للمنتجات الغذائية وتقليل هدر الأغذية، ويقلل إلى أدنى حد من الأثر الذي يخلفه إنتاج الأغذية ومعالجتها وتوزيعها وإدارة النفايات، حيث أن استخدام النهج الأنظف والأكثر كفاءة في استخدام الموارد يؤدي إلى التقليل إلى أدنى حد من الأثر المادي والنفايات والملوثات، ما من شأنه توفير فرص اقتصادية ونوعية حياة أفضل للمستهلكين والمنتجين على حد سواء، إضافة إلى تأثيره الإيجابي على التنوع الحيوي. لقد خطت المملكة الأردنية الهاشمية خطوات ملموسة في مجال التحول نحو الاقتصاد الأخضر وأنماط إنتاج واستهلاك مستدامة، ومن أبرز ما تم تحقيقه إطلاق الاستراتيجية وخطة العمل الوطنية للاستهلاك والإنتاج المستدامين في قطاعات الزراعة والنقل وإدارة النفايات في الأردن للأعوام 2016-2025، حيث تعتبر هذه الوثيقة إحدى الأدوات التنفيذية لخارطة الطريق للنمو الأخضر التي صدرت عام 2017 وخططها التنفيذية القطاعية. كما تم إصدار الخطة الوطنية لإدارة النفايات الصلبة وإقرار القانون الإطاري لإدارة النفايات لسنة 2020 بهدف التحول نحو اقتصاد دائري وتعزيز مشاركة القطاع الخاص للاستثمار بهذا القطاع لغاية رفع نسبة النفايات المعاد تدويرها إلى 35% بحلول عام 2034. أما فيما يخص التنوع الحيوي فقد تم إنجاز ما نسبته أكثر من 90% من الأهداف الوطنية الواردة في الاستراتيجية الوطنية للتنوع الحيوي وخطة العمل. ولقد تم إعلان محمية العقبة البحرية كأول محمية بحرية في المملكة وعلى مساحة 2.28 كيلومتر مربع، علما بأن الأردن هو من بين الدول الأولى في المنطقة في تأسيس شبكة من المناطق المحمية، حيث يبلغ عدد المناطق المحمية 11 بمساحة 1885 كيلومتر مربع. في النهاية اسمحوا لي أن أؤكد على أهمية الاتحاد من أجل المتوسط كمنصة إقليمية مناسبة لتحقيق التعاون الإقليمي الفعال، وأهمية اللجان وفرق العمل التي أنشئت تحت مظلة الاتحاد لتكون المحرك الرئيسي لتنفيذ وتنسيق الإجراءات اللازمة لتحقيق طموحنا فيما يخص البيئة والعمل المناخي. وفي هذا الإطار أثمن العمل الذي قامت به مجموعة العمل المعنية بالبيئة وتغير المناخ من جهود خلال الفترة الماضية، وأؤكد على ضرورة مواصلة دعم تلك المجموعة للانتهاء من إعداد وتنفيذ أجندة 2030 للتحول نحو منطقة متوسطية أكثر اخضراراً وخارطة طريق العمل المناخي، حيث تشكل هاتان الوثيقتان أرضية مهمة للعمل المشترك في المرحلة القادمة. أشكر جميع المشاركين معنا اليوم، متمنيا لنا جميعا التوفيق في نقاشات مثمرة وبناءة لما فيه الخير لمصلحة بلداننا في الاتحاد من أجل المتوسط. وأشكر.
Thank you very much for your kind word on behalf of the Minister of Jordan. It's my distinct pleasure to invite His Excellency Ambassador Nasser Kamal, the Secretary General of the Union for the Mediterranean. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Dr. Khalida Bouzar, and thank you for being a great partner of the UFM. I just had the pleasure of meeting you in person in New York less than 2 weeks ago, and it was a great pleasure to work together on enhancing relation cooperation, synergy between your great organization and the UFM. Ladies and gentlemen, Excellency, dear colleagues, we all know that we are facing a climate emergency, and we are in the Mediterranean a climate hotspot, but we are also a biodiversity hotspot. So I'm not going to dwell on the challenges because the previous speaker have portrayed, explained, and pointed to the great emergency we are facing today in the region in terms of biodiversity. But let me approach it from a positive perspective by saying I'm happy that this year has been the year of environment and climate action as far as the UFM is concerned. We have adopted three very strong and interlinked ministerial declarations in 1 year. The first one was in blue economy, and definitely when you talk blue economy, you're talking biodiversity, because by protecting the sea, by ensuring sustainable development around the sea, you are protecting our very precious natural resource in the sea and around the sea. The other one was the UFM Ministerial Declaration on Energy, which we adopted on the 15th of June in Lisbon. And if you talk energy transition, renewable energy, you are again protecting the ecological welfare and the biodiversity of our region and beyond. And today, we have adopted a very progressive, forward-looking declaration on environment and climate action, and there is no need for me to explain the link between what this declaration has adopted in terms of commitments and actions and today's side event. Because this ministerial has confirmed the commitment of our 42 member states, for stronger action on both climate, environmental emergency, and of course, biodiversity is at the center of those two priorities. So we as the UFM, our work and our role is a facilitator. We use our ability to build effective regional cooperation between the two shores of the Mediterranean and ensure that we move forward collectively. And to do that, and in order to meet the 2030 objective, our effort must increase, and thanks to the adoption of those ministerial declarations, especially today, ministerial declaration, we can count on two main cooperation tools. The first one is the Greener Med Agenda, which is the result of 2 years of consultation with member states, stakeholders, donors, and it was shaped as a tool for policy and operational coordination, as well as an agenda for convergence of donor funding around joint objectives. And this agenda serves as an umbrella initiative that is currently encompassing more than 84 regional projects. We all know that the Greener Mid Agenda has 3 axes, but for me, and in relation to our event today, one of its main axes is to ensure protection and restoration of biodiversity and natural resource, and of course, help support the transition toward green, circular, and socially inclusive economy, and of course, encourage production practice, encourage nature-based solution. And the third one, as you all very much know, is to prevent and reduce pollution in land, sea, and air. The other tool that this declaration has afforded us with is the Climate Work Plan, which is focusing primarily on the importance of linking society to science and policy, the interface between these 3 major elements and climate finance. Why? Because I feel that science-society policy interface is very clear that the UFM believe that science should be the base of all our efforts, and because science does give us a description of the issue and challenges, but also it shows us the answer and the way forward. And in that case, the first assessment report on climate change in the Mediterranean and its summary policy makers developed by MEDEC was indeed a game changer, being the first regional study of that scale, and has shown the way in terms of its policy recommendation when it comes to climate action, but also when it comes to preserving our biodiversity. I will not develop the subject more than this. I will just end my intervention by saying that we at the UFM, we expect, dear ladies and gentlemen, that we have to work together to fulfill the objective laid out in this declaration, and we need your collaboration, and we need everyone and every partner efforts and resources. And I'm certain that we can count on our member states and all the stakeholders to work together to achieve that goals. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kamel. For sure, we need to act collectively. With this, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Abul Ghait, Secretary General of the League of Arab States, to provide our final keynote remarks for this segment of the side event. Your Excellency, you are the last but not the least. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I am apology as my name is Mahmoud Fathallah. I am the Director of Environmental Affairs at the League of Arab States and head of the Technical Secretariat of the Council of Arab Ministers responsible for the environment. I will deliver the speech on behalf of the League of Arab States in Arabic. معالي الدكتورة ياسمين فؤاد وزير البيئة جمهورية مصر العربية، سعادة السيدة فيجينوس سينكيفيكوس المفوض الأوروبي للبيئة والمحيطات والمصائد السمكية الرئاسة المشتركة للاتحاد الأوروبي والاتحاد من أجل المتوسط، معالي الدكتور نبيل مصاروة وزير البيئة المملكة الأردنية الهاشمية الرئاسة المشتركة للاتحاد من أجل المتوسط، سعادة السفير ناصر كامل الأمين العام سكرتارية الاتحاد من أجل المتوسط، السيدات والسادة الحضور الكريم، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. يسعدني في بداية كلمتي أن أنقل إليكم تحيات معالي السيد أحمد أبو الغيط الأمين العام لجامعة الدول العربية وتمنياته أن يحالف اجتماعكم هذا التوفيق والسداد. إنني أشارك معكم اليوم ممثلا لجامعة الدول العربية ومتحدثا باسم الأمانة الفنية لمجلس الوزراء العرب المسؤولين عن شؤون البيئة، ذلك الكيان الذي يمثل الآلية العربية الإقليمية المعتمدة في إطار منظومة جامعة الدول العربية للتنسيق والتعاون في كافة مجالات البيئة والتنمية المستدامة. السيدات والسادة، لقد أدركنا في جامعة الدول العربية ومجلس الوزراء العرب المسؤولين عن شؤون البيئة منذ البداية أن تراجع خدمات النظم الإيكولوجية نتيجة الخسائر المستمرة في الموارد الطبيعية وتدهور الأراضي يقوض المساعي التي تبذلها المنطقة وقدراتها على تحقيق الأمن الغذائي، كما أن الظواهر المناخية الشديدة لا سيما الجفاف والفيضانات المفاجئة والعواصف الرملية والترابية إلى جانب النزاعات والهجرة إنما تؤدي إلى تفاقم أوجه ضعف النظم الإيكولوجية وإضعاف دورها في المحافظة على سبل العيش لملايين البشر. من هنا فإننا نؤمن بأن التعاون والتنسيق بين كافة الشركاء الدوليين لإصلاح النظم الإيكولوجية يمثل فرصة فريدة من نوعها لتوحيد الجهود المبذولة من جميع الأطراف المعنية من أجل وقف تدهور النظم الإيكولوجية وتعزيز عملية الإصلاح واستهداف النظم الإيكولوجية المتدهورة في المنطقة، ومنها المناطق الزراعية والمراعي والغابات ومصائد الأسماك والمناطق الساحلية والأراضي الرطبة من أجل النهوض بها من خلال برامج الإصلاح واسعة النطاق. السيدات والسادة، تأتي كلمتي هذه تأكيداً لإيمان جامعة الدول العربية بأهمية العمل البيئي بشكل جاد وتثمين دور التعاون الدولي ومراكز البحث العلمي والتدريب في إيجاد حلول علمية تعمل على وقف واستعادة النظم البيئية والتكيف مع آثار تغير المناخ ووقف التصحر وتدهور الأراضي. إن مجلس الوزراء العرب المسؤولين عن شؤون البيئة يستعد حالياً لانعقاد دورته 32 التي تنعقد حضورياً في مقر الأمانة العامة لجامعة الدول العربية بعد أقل من أسبوع من الآن في الفترة من 10 إلى 14 أكتوبر الجاري، لمناقشة عدد من الموضوعات الهامة المدرجة على جدول أعماله، والتي من بينها التعامل العربي مع قضايا تغير المناخ والتحضيرات الخاصة بالدورة 26 لمؤتمر الأطراف في اتفاقية الأمم المتحدة الإطارية لتغير المناخ التي سوف تعقد نهاية هذا الشهر في مدينة غلاسكو بالمملكة المتحدة. كما تتم متابعة موضوعات البعد البيئي في أهداف التنمية المستدامة والموقف العربي في كافة الاتفاقيات البيئية الخاصة بالتصحر والتنوع البيولوجي، وكذلك بحث جوانب التعاون الدولي في مجال البيئة. إننا نؤمن بأن العمل البيئي مسؤولية تشاركية بين مختلف دول العالم مع مراعاة تباين الدول في تحمل تلك الأعباء. السيدات والسادة، في نهاية كلمتي لا يسعني إلا أن أتقدم بالشكر والتقدير لكل من ساهم في إعداد وتنظيم هذا الحدث الهام، متمنياً أن يخرج اجتماعكم هذا بنتائج تساهم في دعم العمل البيئي لصالح شعوب منطقتنا والعالم على حد سواء. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Thank you, shukran jazilan. Thank you very much for your insightful and strategic regional reflection on behalf of the League of Arab States. This is very important. With this, we conclude the first keynote segment of our side event, and we now move to our next segment to review the state of biodiversity, ecosystems, and food security in the Mediterranean region. To start this segment, I'm pleased to invite Mr. Jamie Morrison, Director, Food System and Food Safety Division from FAO. You have the floor, and let me remind you, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Dr. Bizarre. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, please allow me to thank the co-presidencies of the Union for the Mediterranean and its Secretary General, Ambassador Kamal, for inviting FAO to this high-level event. As we all know, the world is not on track to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. After decades of decline, the number of hungry people has been growing for the past 5 years, reaching up to 800 million people last year. More than 3 billion people still cannot afford a healthy diet, with obesity and non-communicable diseases on the rise. And importantly for this event in particular, agri-food systems are contributing significantly to natural resource degradation and to exacerbating the effects of climate change. Indeed, there are 80 million hectares of degraded lands in the Mediterranean region alone. The outcomes of the UN Food Systems Summit, which was held on the 23rd of September, reaffirm how food systems can and must play a role in addressing all of these challenges simultaneously if we're to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. Governments are committing to accelerating their efforts in transforming agri-food systems, acknowledging that complex, interdependent challenges call for cross-sectorial and interdisciplinary solutions. And as of today, 104 of the 148 countries that led processes of national dialogue under the Food Systems Summit have already made their pathways available online. The summit called for action to be driven at country level by governments, by stakeholders in their local contexts. And these were aligned to 5 action areas: nourishing all people, boosting nature positive solutions, advancing equitable livelihoods, building resilience to vulnerabilities, shocks and stress, and accelerating means of implementation, such as financing. A number of multi-stakeholder initiatives and coalitions are already being built to help accelerate progress for better coordinated action on each of the 5 areas of action. And these recognize, for example, the urgency to move towards regenerative practices across land, freshwater, and oceans. At FAO, the importance of restoration of production ecosystems has triggered a debate at our technical committees. And the theme is reflected in our medium-term plan as part of priority program areas on biodiversity and ecosystem services, as well as in the recently launched UN Decade of Ecosystem Restoration 2021 to 2030. With contributions from donors such as Italy and Germany, FAO is supporting Mediterranean countries in achieving their targets and enhancing national capacities to access funding opportunities through, for example, the Green Climate Fund and the Global Environment Facility. We've also heard the call to support national mechanisms in developing and implementing the national pathways in order to ensure that they are inclusive and consistent with countries' climate and restoration commitments. These need to build on the National Food System Summit dialogues that have taken place over the last year, many of which have taken place in the Mediterranean region. And they need to include all relevant stakeholders, including international finance institutions, private sector and civil society, playing a key supporting role. In line with this, I'm very pleased to convey that FAO has recently joined forces with the Union for the Mediterranean and with the International Centre for Advanced Mediterranean Agronomic Studies to build a strategic initiative to bring together all relevant stakeholders in the Mediterranean region to support the transition towards more sustainable food systems. The so-called SFS-MED, the Sustainable Food Systems for the Mediterranean platform, aims at fostering a sense of community to leverage existing knowledge, experience, and skills of institutions across the Mediterranean. More specifically, it provides a forum for dialogue and collaboration on key themes for food systems transformation in the Mediterranean, acting as a neutral facilitator of multi-stakeholder exchange to enhance policy coherence, innovation, and to promote effective implementation of the national pathways. It also offers an ideal setting to rebalance sustainability and finance, enabling Mediterranean food systems to access funding and to scale up sustainable investments. Building on other regional processes, such as the 2030 Greener Med Agenda, which Ambassador Kamal just mentioned, this multi-stakeholder initiative checks all of the boxes for catalyzing food system transformation in the Mediterranean. And the momentum created by the summit provides us with this excellent opportunity to bring together the invaluable experiences of countries and stakeholders across the region to strengthen the efforts being engaged towards more efficient, inclusive, resilient, and sustainable agri-food systems. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much. I'm impressed everybody's taking to their time. Thank you very much for your insight into the path forward from the UN Food System Summit and the challenges in the region. Let me turn to Ms. Tatiana Hema, coordinator of UNEP MAP, and let us hear from UNEP's perspective. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. My name is Tatiana Hema. I'm the UNEP MAP coordinator, Barcelona Convention, and I would like to provide you some information on how we handle biodiversity and its ecosystem services in the Mediterranean from the UNEP MAP Barcelona Convention, and in particular its protocol on specially protected areas. 2 words about the vision. Our vision for the Mediterranean is a healthy Mediterranean with productive and biological diverse coastal and marine ecosystem, contributing to sustainable development for the benefit of the present and future generation. Why biodiversity is considered a hotspot in the Mediterranean? For the simple reason, because of its richness and beauty. 18% of marine species that are known in the world, and 17,000 marine species, they are in the Mediterranean, when the entire Mediterranean Sea is 0.3 of the volume of the ocean. So it's extremely a very rich sea. However, the threats are huge. And I'll give you some figures why we need to take very strong action to conserve biodiversity. The emblematic Posidonia oceanica, well known for many ecosystem services provided, is in a decline of 30% in the last 50 years. And if we continue without taking the necessary measures, in 2100, we are not going to have them anymore in the region. And this is a big, big loss. 78 marine species and 168 coastal species are threatened in the Mediterranean. There are 40% reduction of the marine predators. There are 1,000 species non-indigenous in the Mediterranean, out of which 10% are invasive. There is 48% of the wetlands that have been disappeared in the Mediterranean since 70. There is only 9% of the Mediterranean Sea which officially is under protection as marine protected areas. And there is 78% of the stocks, fish stocks under assessment that are overexploited. So all these figures are alarming, which make us really to think a lot and to take action in order to protect biodiversity. And what does it mean, the loss of biodiversity? Loss of biodiversity, apart from beauty and the richness of this region, means also loss of the ecosystem services, means less natural protection against erosion, means less natural protection against flooding, and many other disasters that we are following and we are facing now, including also their aggravation due to the climate change. How in the Barcelona Convention we are responding to it? As we said, I mentioned in the morning session that we do have a very strong program, and we are going to the next meeting of the contracting parties with a new regional strategy to protect marine biodiversity. And our contracting parties, they made it very clear when they gave us the mandate in Naples at the last meeting of the contracting parties that we have to prepare a strategy that is actionable and transformational, and has to be in line with post-2020 global biodiversity framework. And it has to be developed using a bottom-up approach in close collaboration with our contracting parties, global and regional organizations, national institutions, in order to make sure that we have already defined a sub-bio that has very strong premises for a real implementation after its adoption by the contracting party. Another the vision of the sub-bio is by 2050, marine and coastal biodiversity is valued, conserved, restored, and wisely used, maintaining ecosystem services, sustaining a healthy Mediterranean sea and coast, and delivering benefits essential for nature and people. And the mission for 2030, by 2030, start to reverse the loss of biodiversity and put the Mediterranean marine and coastal biodiversity on the path of recovery for the benefit of nature and people. There are three goals. The first one, reduce the threats to biodiversity. The second one ensures the biodiversity is preserved and maintained or enhanced in order to meet people needs. And the third one, enable the necessary transformative change, putting in place tools and solutions for implementation and mainstreaming. I'm not going more in detail because lack of time, but we'll have opportunity to know more about it at our meeting of the contracting parties in December. Another important policy and strategy that we are going to put at the table of the next meeting of the contracting party is the post-2020 regional strategy on marine protected areas and other area-based management tools. And the intention is to have a Mediterranean network of effectively and equitably managed, and they do imply numerous quantitative and qualitative improvement to biodiversity at different levels. And the target for this is to at least 30% of Mediterranean areas, particularly important for biodiversity, are adequately protected and conserved through a well-connected and effective system of protected areas and other effective area-based conservation measures. It's also a very important document and a very important commitment for us. And I would like also to recall the IUCN Congress in Marseille, when several Mediterranean countries made very important commitments, like France, Greece, in order to make sure that they do expand marine protected areas and they do put them under strict control in a very good, big surface in the region. And then 2 words, I did mention why biodiversity is important. And biodiversity is important because it ensures a very strong sustainability dimension for our economic development. Let me give you some very figures in another way of showing the importance of biodiversity. And I would like to say that the Mediterranean Sea represents 1% of the world ocean surface, but the economic value of the ecosystem services coming from the oceans, the so-called gross marine product, is 400 billion annually. So it's very important, and it occupies 20% of the global marine product. And 92% comes from tourism, marine and coastal tourism, 2% from fisheries and aquaculture. And this is very important. And if you see the distribution of those figures among Mediterranean countries, it is obvious that this is something that is very important to be considered as a very important priority for the region. So having said that, it's very important for all of us to pay attention to biodiversity, to take the necessary measures for its protection as a way to also enhance the sustainability, to build back better and greener. And thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much. I am informed that we are now going to play an interesting video, a very short one, on the sustainable food system in the region. Thank you very much for this inspiring video. After Ms. Hema, I would like to give the floor to Ms. Elodie Nunes, and she's the Executive Secretary, Conference of Peripheral Maritime Regions. You have the floor and no more than 5 minutes. Sorry, I feel like the bad guy here today. Thank you, over to you.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Chairwoman. So yes, indeed, thank you for inviting me, first of all. I'm very happy to be here today with you. I take the opportunity to congratulate you, to congratulate the UFM for the ratification of the Declaration on Environment and Climate Change. Well, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I am here today representing the work of regional authorities. We work all in all for the cohesion of the Mediterranean area. And it's actually good that you showed this video right before my intervention because it really links to what we are doing regarding sustainable agriculture and food sovereignty in the Mediterranean. So within our network, we have really committed regions on the topic. And indeed, at the beginning of 2021, we worked hand in hand with the Committee of the Regions, and more specifically, the Euro-Mediterranean Regional and Local Assembly, the RLM, of the Committee of the Regions, on a report studying agriculture and food security facing climate change in the Mediterranean. So this report has been, let's say, the starting point of our works, and it tries to initiate a renewal of the agricultural sector towards more sustainability, and in order to offer also decent incomes to farmers that would preserve the health of populations thanks to a revitalized and recognized Mediterranean diet. And it's true that we have the chance, I would say, in the Mediterranean to have a very good diet, and the report so goes hand in hand with the conclusion that we should valorize it even more so towards the sustainability of our agriculture and food systems, and also towards the marketing of the Mediterranean in the world, if I should say so. It also states, well, the importance of preserving biodiversity of the Mediterranean, because of course, a good Mediterranean diet doesn't go with a nice state of resources to be able to exploit them to ensure good circular ecosystems and food productions that end in our plates the right way and with good quality items. So what we did within our network is that following these reports, we created a specific work axis that aims to actually develop synergies between water issues and food issues. They're very linked, and we know also that in the Mediterranean, water scarcity can be a problem to agriculture. So we're trying to put in relations the two elements and see how by working hand in hand with the various sectors, but also on projects, on cooperation with the territories, local actors, irrigation, communities, farmers, how we can try to solve these issues and how we can create virtuous ecosystems so that we work hand in hand towards more sustainability of both water management and food systems. We also aim to use, obviously, the opportunities, the funding opportunities put forward by the European Union or international organizations, while also going towards the global goals that we have internationally set. What we recommend in these work axes is to try to have a macro-regional approach to the integration of these themes, of these issues between one another, because it's good to work at nation states level, but it's also good to work at regional administrative level as well as local level. And this could go horizontally also as well as vertically. So it's very important to be able to ensure this multi-level governance dynamic so that the efforts that we make together go to the same direction and are more successful in the end. This is the reason why we also extend our hands to the Union for the Mediterranean. We also had the chance when we kicked off this new work axis to work with the FAO and CM on the launch event. And one of the main conclusions that came up by then was to try to observe indeed this multi-stakeholder approach towards the resolution of these issues, and more specifically, the management of food systems. To give you a very short example of what our members are doing, our regions are doing, and to show you that things happen on the ground and we should consider them when we reflect more broadly on these issues. The Occitanie region, for example, in France, has been working on food sustainability and food management by implementing 2 food plans. And so their idea is to meet the challenges that are posed by climate change. What they do basically is trying to create a brand that guarantees the origin of the products coming from the territory. So it's a way of valorizing what comes from the territory by ensuring also short distribution circuits, ensuring employment for the people of the territory, and ensuring that there's, in terms of emissions, for example, for the production of food, the impacts are much lower than what they can be through importations, for example. I'm about to conclude, just 30 seconds. And they also work on the more social level with helping farmers to try to think about how to adapt their exploitations so that their way of producing agriculture is more sustainable, and so on and so forth. So beyond this example, throughout our territories at regional level, we have much more to offer, and we hope to be able to work hand in hand with you and to help support the implementation of the Union for the Mediterranean's ministerial declaration on the topic. And especially because what has been observed previously is that there are sometimes some gaps still remaining between the solutions that we try to think about at international level and the ground reality. So it's really important that we observe this multi-level governance dynamics, and we're happy to help in this matter so that we make sure that both ends meet. And that's it from me. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Nunes. Indeed, the gaps are huge, and we need to join forces to fill them. With that, I'm pleased to invite Mr. Hamed Adli, that I knew for 25 years. Hamed is director of the Arab Network for Environment and Development. Please, the floor is yours, and it's good to see you.
Khalida, it's good to see you. I'm so happy to see you here, and I'm so proud that you are leading this session. But forgive me, Khalida, I'm going to continue in Arabic, if you don't mind. And let me start by, now I move to Arabic. أود في البداية أن أتقدم بالشكر للاتحاد من أجل المتوسط على دعوته لي للمشاركة في هذه الجلسة، والتي أعتبرها بكل المقاييس جلسة من أهم الجلسات التي تعقد على مستوى البحر المتوسط. والشكر والتهنئة للاتحاد من أجل المتوسط لما حققه في خلال وكما استمعنا لكلمة السيد المدير التنفيذي أو السكرتير التنفيذي للسفير ناصر كامل على ما حققه الاتحاد في ظل فترة من أصعب الفترات التي تمر بها هذه المنطقة، وخاصة في ظروف الجائحة التي تتعرض لها كل الدول، ليست فقط دولة واحدة، ولكن في ظل كمان عدم استقرار ومشاكل خاصة تواجه منطقتنا وخاصة في الجنوب. طبعا أنا سعيد بمشاركتي كممثل المجتمع المدني لأحد المنظمات العاملة في جنوب المتوسط، وكنت أتمنى أن أجد هذه المشاركة بنفس الشكل في اجتماعاتي اليوم بالكامل من الصباح وحتى الآن، ولكن أعتقد أنه ما حققناه من نجاح مع جامعة الدول العربية في عام 1995، يعني من حوالي 26 سنة، وسعيد بأن يكون على نفس الطاولة مع زميل الدكتور محمود فتح الله. ما حققناه بأن يكون المجتمع المدني مشارك في اجتماعات وزراء البيئة العرب وفيما بعد في وزراء المياه العرب وفيما بعد في مجالس وزراء أخرى. وكنا نتخيل أننا عندما تحركنا في هذه الفترة من 25 عام أن احنا كنا متأخرين، لكني وجدت أنه ما زلنا نحتاج إلى تفهم أكثر لدور المجتمع المدني، وما زلت بأشكر وسعيد بوجودنا هنا في هذه الجلسة. لكن يعني لا أستطيع أن لا أنقل أو أن يعني أخفي مشاعر كثير من أعضاء هذه المنظمات والشبكات اللي بنتمي إليها من أنه عدم وجود المجتمع المدني في اجتماعات ومجالس الوزراء الخاصة بالبيئة وتغير المناخ إنها يعني شيء يعني نحن غير سعداء به. ولماذا المجتمع المدني؟ المجتمع المدني هو ما يستطيع، هي الجهة التي تستطيع أن تتعامل مباشرة مع المجتمعات اللي كل الأهداف التي وضعتها الأمم المتحدة، سواء في أهداف التنمية المستدامة الSDGs أو قبل كده أهداف التنمية، الأهداف الألفية. كان المجتمع المدني هو الذي يعمل مع المجتمعات المتضررة ويساعد هذه المجتمعات دائما على تحقيق الريزيلينس أو المرونة أو القدرة على الصمود لمواجهة التحديات التي يتحدث عنها. فاستمعنا اليوم لأرقام لن أعيد هذه الأرقام، والمنطقة البحر المتوسط من أكثر هذه المناطق المتضررة من كل ما نعاني منه، سواء كانت تغيرات مناخية أو من تدهور التنوع البيولوجي أو من مشاكل في سلسلة الغذاء اللي بتواجه هذه المنطقة. وبالتالي وجود المجتمع المدني الذي أثبت أولا أنه شريك قوي في صنع السياسات وصنع الخطط الوطنية والإقليمية، ولم يثبت ذلك فقط بالقول ولكن أيضا بالعمل، لأنه يقوم بتنفيذ هذه الأنشطة على مدار العام وكل يوم بيتعامل مع المجتمعات، سواء كان ده بيقوم به من خلال منظمات صغيرة على أرض الواقع زي اللي بنسميها الكوميونيتي بيزد اورجانيزيشنز أو منظمات المجتمع الصغير، أو على مستوى شبكات. وسعيد بأن يكون أحد الشبكات اللي بننتمي إليها هي البلو جرين أو شبكة الأزرق الأخضر اللي بتضم مجموعة من الشبكات المتوسط في الجنوب وفي الشمال. وبالتالي نحن نتحدث عن دور مهم جدا يجب أن يقوم به المجتمع المدني، ويجب أن نعترف بدوره حتى يستمر في الشراكة. والشراكة ليست فقط يعني التصريحات والكلمات الطيبة، ولكن الشراكة بالممارسة الحقيقية على أرض الواقع وإعطاء الشريك الحق الكامل في التعبير. أعلم أن أمامي فقط ثواني قليلة للانتهاء، لكن أحب أن أوجه إلى 4 محاور مهمين عشان نحقق من أجل تحقيق اللي بنتكلم عنه في إعلانات وزارية إقليمية يجب أن نعترف بأنها نقطة تحول إيجابية قوية جدا. نهنئ أنفسنا بما خرج به اجتماع الوزاري اليوم، لكن عايز أقول أن المجتمع المدني بيسعى لتحقيق أولا العمل على وجود تعليم من أجل التنمية المستدامة، تعليم من أجل الاستدامة. فالإدوكيشن، التعليم هو عنصر أساسي. بنشتغل مع الجامعات، مع المدارس، بنشتغل خارج المدرسة، خارج الجامعة، بنشتغل مع المواطن العادي عشان كمان نرفع مستوى الوعي. لكن محتاجين قصاد كده معلومات. المعلومات مهمة جدا عشان نقدر نقوم بهذا العمل. بنشتغل على موضوع الكاباسيتي بيلدينج أو بناء القدرات والكاباسيتي ديفلوبمنت وتنمية القدرات، ومحتاجين نحققها على كل المستويات. محتاجين نحقق على مستوى العامل البسيط او المزارع البسيط اللي موجود في الموقع اللي هيزرع وهيقوم بتوفير الجزء الاساسي للفود سيستم او الفود سيكيورتيز او النظم الغذاء والامن الغذائي. ومحتاجينها ايضا على مستوى صانع، حتى في بعض الاحيان صانع القرار في بعض القرى وبعض المراكز والمدن. محتاجين ايضا ان احنا يكون عندنا باستمرار مشروعات نعبر بيها او نظهر بيها الديمونستريشن بروجكتس عشان نظهر بيها النتائج بتاعت هذه الافكار وهذه العمليات. لكن لازم كمان نركز على ان هذه المشروعات، وكنت اتمنى ان يكون النيتشر بيس سولوشنز او الحلول المعتمده اساسا على الطبيعه هي تكون الحلول باستمرار اللي بناخدها في اعتبارنا واحنا بنتكلم على الاقتصاد الدوار او بنتكلم على الاقتصاد الازرق او بنتكلم على التنميه المستدامه بشكل عام. هذه هي ملامح الدور اللي بيلعبه المجتمع المدني. سعيد بوجودي على هذه المائدة مع الكوكبة المتميزة من شركائنا في الماب، في اليونب ماب، شركائنا في الوزارات، من وزارة البيئة المصرية، وزارة البيئة الأردنية، مع جامعة الدول العربية، مع سكرتارية الاتحاد من أجل المتوسط. وإحنا كمجتمع مدني سنظل في عملنا لأن إحنا نعبر عن رأي المجتمع. نتمنى أن يكون فكر المجتمع المدني وإشراكه يكون شيء أساسي في عملنا. بتمنى لكم التوفيق وبشكركم، والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله. وشكرا مرة أخرى خالدة على وجودك معنا. ألف ألف شكر.
Shukran, Adil. Thank you very much, Adil. And I think you raise a very good point on the role of civil society at large. We often think about NGOs, but community-based organizations have a key role. With this, I'm pleased to invite Professor Michael Skoulos, Chairman of Mediterranean Information Office on Environment, Culture, and Sustainable Development. I am very sorry, I feel very bad that you are limited to 5 minutes, and it doesn't give justice to all the work and the partnership that you represent. You have the floor, and 5 minutes, of course. Thank you, Professor.
Thank you very much, Dr. Buzar. I'll try my best. I start by saying that it's a great honor and pleasure to address this very important side event of this long-awaited UFM ministerial on behalf of the Mediterranean Information Office for Environment, Culture and Sustainable Development, which is the major Mediterranean federation of all the non-state organizations of North, South, East and West of the region, working on environment, culture and sustainable development issues, including among its 133 members, the European Environment Bureau from the north, and RIDE and Emma just took the floor before me from the south. I would like to reinforce all what he said and some kind of disappointment among our members that perhaps because of COVID, some of the traditions of full participation of civil society organizations have been forgotten. I'm sure that this will be restored fully soon. Well, in only 1 week ahead of the COP15 and at the start of the UN decade for ecosystem restoration, the issue of biodiversity, ecosystem restoration and food systems, it is of utmost importance for our organization. On the question of the organizers, where does the Mediterranean stand? My answer is it balances in the middle of a stretched rope, or if you wish, it navigates within the gray interface which separates the area of catastrophic deterioration of our natural bases, which provides us still security at many fronts, life, as Minister Fouad said, and the area of potential, hopefully massive improvements in the ecosystems and if our recommendations and hopes raised during this meeting are fulfilled. I'm not going to refer to the negative conditions, which are certain because many others explained in detail, including Mrs. Hema and many others, and included, of course, in the reports, the recent reports. The improvements, on the other hand, at the moment are still rather very positive and generous intentions. Very welcome, of course. We applaud that. But at the moment, they are still at the policy level. And in order to be implemented, political will should become more visible and at all levels, national and local, and coupled with implementable and concrete measures. This investment is not only money investment, it's also investment in human capital. And MEO, in synergy with its members and other partners, addresses actually this issue through a set of key, very concrete, interrelated interventions. Allow me to mention very briefly the 5 most important. The first one is the promotion and application of the water, energy, food ecosystem nexus, aiming at securing and restoring ecosystems through integrated management through integrated alleviation of pressures generated by the current excessive, uncoordinated exploitation of the other three components, namely water, energy, and food resources. The second is the support and advocacy for meaningful and generous designation of all types of protected areas, and such as the UNDP specially protected areas, Natura 2000, and some emphasis with the biosphere reserves of the Man and the Biosphere UNESCO program, particularly because this program has the differentiated intensity management that we would like to see extended in all protected areas, only by applying a combination of strict protection in the core areas with parallel promotion of sustainable development options in the transition zones. Effective conservation will be achieved with the support of local communities. We have experienced this kind and we have guided this kind of designations with very positive results. Following this line of thinking, we have organized in the last 8 years annual capacity building trainings in cooperation with the EU LIFE program, the UNESCO Regional Bureau for Science and Culture in Europe of Venice, and the Hellenic Green Fund under the title Summer Hybrid in the last years, universities for managers of protected areas, graduate students, on state organizations. The third is by restoring, cleaning, and monitoring biodiversity hotspots with the involvement of citizens and schools. Here I come to the citizen science or, greater bringing in science civil society. We embarked on a campaign to make coastal protected areas single-use plastic free. And we hope that towards this achievement on the southern shores as well, the contribution of the EU-funded WEST program project will be of great importance. Fourth, biodiversity restoration starts, as my friend Emad said, with behavioral changes, and this requires a systematic formal, non-formal, and informal education, public awareness, addressing specific target groups, farmers, tourist enterprises, and others. These interventions are in the heart of the activities of MEDIS, of our program of Mediterranean Educational Initiative for Environment Sustainability, that brings together more than 6,000 educators from throughout the Mediterranean region. Finally, fifth, we have a program supported by the Anne Lind Foundation on Mediterranean food, with the support and contribution of groups from all over the Mediterranean, north and south, covering the Mediterranean food from the historic, health, environmental, and economic aspects. The activities mentioned, Mrs. Facilitator, focus on the specific issue of our discussion here, but are complemented by a galaxy of interventions and mobilization of other influence and circles apart from the one of our NGO members, such as COMSUD, the Circle of Mediterranean Parliamentarians for Sustainable Development, and COMZEST, the Circle of Media. With all the above, we hope that we contribute to, with our limited resources, to the work of the Mediterranean states in keeping our valuable biodiversity for this and the future generations. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, Professor. You brought a very interesting point of view on the need to raise awareness on consumption patterns. With this, you were the last speaker, but not the least speaker to this segment of the side event. And we now go to the next segment, which is a final one. Please stay connected to review programming to support the UFM Environment and Climate Agenda. To start us off, I'm pleased to invite Mr. Philip Mikos, Head of Unit, Cooperation with North Africa Countries from the EU. Sir, you have 5 minutes and the floor is yours. Over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Khalida. Good evening, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to say a few words on behalf of the Commission and DG Neighborhood on the issue of regional projects. It's a great pleasure to be here and to intervene in this very important topic of biodiversity, which is a fundamental pillar of the EU Green Deal, and which is a plan to aim at becoming climate neutral by 2050, but this climate neutrality cannot be attained without a more substantial and more constructive investment on addressing the loss of biodiversity. Biodiversity loss is accelerated by climate change and at the same time exacerbates it by debilitating nature's ability to sequester or store carbon and to adapt to climate change impact. It is time that we treat biodiversity as a crisis with the same urgency as we are addressing the climate crisis. If we look back where we were 10 years ago talking about climate change, we are now at that stage on biodiversity. We need a transformational change that takes us over onto addressing it as a real global crisis. President von der Leyen has endorsed the Leaders' Pledge for Nature alongside 92 other world leaders, and this is what the type of engagement, political and transformational, that we need. Is a concrete example of how change is happening. Here today, Ambassador Kamel has presented the 2030 Greener Med Agenda. It gives a structural framework to work together to achieve the common objectives of accelerating transition in the Mediterranean region towards a green, circular, inclusive economy and reducing pollution on land, air, sea. All these are crucial and critical areas to invest in for the Mediterranean. It is a most welcome and important development which we hope will assist the countries of the Southern Mediterranean in realizing commitments made under the Convention for Biological Diversity, which includes, among others, the ambition to have 30% of land and sea under protection by 2030. Protected areas can play a role. They are key in reversing the alarming trend in biodiversity loss, helping to safeguard ecosystems, restore habitats and species. This is particularly important in the Mediterranean, where as a result of large cities, rivers and shore uses, tourism and intense fishing, 30% of the world's maritime traffic, close basing, insufficient infrastructure in processing wastes. The Mediterranean has been described as one of the places most affected by marine litter in the world. Our objective must be to reverse the situation. Essential to this effort will be the establishment of sustainable waste management. This requires investment, and it's an integral part of the circular economy approach that keeps materials in the economy for as long as possible and reduce the volume of waste in the longer term. A robust network of marine protected areas can deliver clear economic benefits, food provision, we've heard it, coastal protection, carbon storage, and all positive results for the environment and for the economy. And the European Union stands ready to assist you and assist the southern countries with this task. We already have a wide range of regional and bilateral projects ongoing for a value of over 500 million euros to work on these issues. As an example, I can quote the Switch Med, which was mentioned this morning already, which supports the transition towards sustainable consumption and production. The Water and Environment Support Program, fighting against marine pollution with a particular focus on plastics. Integrated Monitoring and Assessment Program, and I can go on with a number of these projects. Now, projects are important because they catalyze action. They serve as examples, but without political commitment, these projects and the financing of it will not be sufficient. So we're also investing in projects in transport, energy sectors to make them more sustainable, streamlining environmental and climate considerations, and the regional programs work with central and local authorities. That is the key. Investments with central and local authorities supporting their political commitment. And we should not forget, as previous speakers mentioned, the role of civil societies in it, binding together both local authorities, central authorities, and the people at large. Regional programs serve to test solutions that can subsequently be scaled up in national contexts, and they're important for that, but there is, of course, much more that we can do and that we have to do. President von der Leyen acknowledged this in her State of the Union address 2 weeks ago, in which she committed to a doubling of external funding for biodiversity, whilst overall the Commission intends to dedicate 35% of all financial cooperation to climate and environmental action. This target translates concretely into investments of over 7 billion euros in grants and loans that the EU will mobilize the next 4 years. This will go through bilateral and regional programs, and during the preparation of the bilateral programs, the multi-annual indicative programs that we are discussing with our partner countries, we could see how well and how substantially climate and environment priorities are moving up national agendas. It is a welcome development. It will help the EU to give substance to its pledges and to concretize the commitments of our partner countries. Without political commitment, as I was saying, funds will have little or unsustainable impact. Hence, throughout our cooperation, we'll continue to address the existing themes, but we may place even greater emphasis on sustainable consumption and production, protection of biodiversity, and integrate actions linked to sustainable food systems. The whole range of EU financial instruments will be mobilized, including financial guarantees and blending schemes. We would also like to reinforce the link between research and policy making, working with the Joint Research Center, and then using twinning facilities, allowing us to draw on the expertise of EU member states that can be deployed to support our partner countries in realizing the greener Med agenda. Of course, policy dialogue remains indispensable, and for this we will continue to support the functioning of the UFM Secretariat and as an important and fundamental partner in this endeavor. Thank you all for allowing me this time to speak to you. Hearty congratulations for this successful event, and warm thanks to our hosts. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Interesting point, and especially calling for biodiversity crisis situation. With this, I would like to invite Ms. Cici Gruber, Active Senior Advisor, Healthy Oceans and Seas, DG Research and Innovation. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Chair. Dear Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the kind invitation to this event. The long-standing cooperation with the UFM and the UFM Secretariat is vital to build shared solutions across the Mediterranean. And I would like to praise this continuing support to our joint initiatives. As we have heard, climate change and biodiversity loss are inseparable threats to our planet, and in particular to the Mediterranean region. And the COVID-19 pandemic has brought a new understanding of how much we depend on our natural world and the need to work together. The Blue Med initiative, with its work and its group of senior officials, is a symbol on how we can work together across the Mediterranean. We community of practice tackle biodiversity loss and pollution. These are both at the center of our life support system, our food systems, our food supply. As we have already heard, the Green Deal and related strategies has set in law new targets on biodiversity, on nutrients, on plastics, on nature restoration. That also means that the research and and innovations to lead and act, to serve this, to help to set us, to deliver sound knowledge that informs sound making and delivers the much needed solutions to our citizens. Consequently, the role of science is also changing. This future should work. We need to become even more a steward, a bridge maker between the world of innovation, investment, citizens, and policy. If we are going to successfully achieve the necessary transitions, we need a fundamental systemic transformation by design. The new framework program for research in Europe has been created to approach this solution, solving these problems. Right at the heart of Horizon Europe's are the missions which the European Commission has launched just last week. 5 new European missions. One is focusing at restoring our ocean and waters by 2030. Biodiversity is really at the heart. This mission will address the ocean and water as one integrated system, a key role in achieving climate neutrality and restoring nature and biodiversity. It will do so through 3 interconnected, very understandable goals. All 3 goals are very much linked to the objectives of what the ministerial meeting delivered today and what is discussed in this event here. By 2030 to protect 30% of the EU seas areas, as well as restoring water ecosystems and biodiversity, 25,000 kilometers of free-flowing rivers, prevent and eliminate pollution by reduced plastic litter at sea, nutrient losses, and use of chemical pesticides 50%, and make the blue economy climate neutral and circular with net zero maritime emissions. How are we going to do that? The Commission proposes to roll out the mission by organizing it in putting really people right at the center of this, by focusing on the way how we can collectively work together in sequence. Maritime cities, scientists, policymakers, young people, regions, investors, around what is called a place-based lighthouse. There is currently a lighthouse for the Mediterranean, including all partners of the sea basin. Through new calls and investment in Horizon Europe, and the first calls will be published in December. They are open to participate from Mediterranean countries, so watch out. Through new solutions which will be tested on the ground, primarily on pollution, through leveraging the BlueNet initiative and its strategic research and innovation agenda with the various pilot initiatives, through pulling in the knowledge from past and ongoing projects, through connecting the many other projects and initiatives going on in the Med regions, and we have heard many today, for a huge mobilization of citizens and young people. What we need to do is to ensure that everyone has access to the solutions, to the networks, to the know-how and the investments. Knowledge sharing and access are a critical part of a just and fair transition, and nobody should be left behind. Inclusivity, as we have been reminded by our keynote speaker, is going to be very critical. This is ambitious, but it can be done. We have seen that the BlueMed initiative is a pioneer initiative, has scientifically been so important, but it's just the beginning of a scalable initiative by mobilizing and bringing all countries and the many ongoing different groups, networks, and projects together. It's time to act and implement. So join our call of action. Let us to continue to work together up this cooperation, make a contribution to making peace with nature in the Mediterranean and globally. Thank you very much.
Many thanks, Sigi, for these important words, and actually for leaving us, for a broad, let's say, overview of all what the missions will be carrying on in the years to come. Still, let's say, staying with the activities, actually, that DG Research is promoting in the Mediterranean region, I'm now pleased to pass the floor to the chairman, actually, of the Prima Foundation, and in particular to Professor Reccaboni and Professor El Shinawi. So the floor is yours. We just ask you to keep to the time that is allocated. We had an incredible full days of contribution, and we look forward actually to develop and implement all these together in the future. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I'm Dr. Mohammed Shinawi, and on behalf of Prima Foundation, myself and Professor Reccaboni, I would like to thank the organizers, especially the Union for Mediterranean and our dear friend, Ambassador Nasser Kamel, the European Commission, Kingdom of Jordan, and of course, the Arab Republic of Egypt, our host. Thanks for inviting Prima to intervene in this high-level side event, meeting of the Union of Mediterranean Ministerial on Environmental and Climate Action. Prima, which is a long-term EU partnership for research and innovation in the Mediterranean area, supported by the European Commission within the Horizon framework and 19 Euro Mediterranean countries, was launched in 2017. We are strongly based on co-ownership, equal footing, and mutual benefits for northern and southern countries, who had shown to be an effective instrument for research and innovation cooperation and a good example of science diplomacy able to foster both North, South, and South.
Sorry, there is a problem with the audio. Professor Shinawi, we can't hear anymore. Maybe while
to important
now. We can't hear you. I'm very sorry.
Recording in progress.
The zero pollution ambition, the biodiversity strategy, and the circular economy action plan. Prima projects such as why this is actually an economic and environmental burden for several southern Mediterranean countries, in particular for Egypt, into high-value nutritional products to sustainable and healthy dietary pattern. Other projects aim to increase the adherence to the Mediterranean diet as a valuable, sustainable, and healthy dietary pattern. Environmental friendly aligned with the farm and fork strategy and the conclusions of the sustainable food system. Prima is orienting present and future actions toward more sustainable consumption and production patterns with no negative impact on human health and environment. Along these lines, Prima is focusing in cooperation with the EU Mission in Soil Health and Food on concrete actions aiming to increase soil and water sustainability, combating land degradation and desertification, and promoting ecosystems restoration. Many good practices and approaches, mainly focusing on the adoption on agri-ecological practices, have been developed by the project supported by Prima in order to support the transition towards a green economy and a sustainable model. We count on 19 ongoing projects focusing on the conservation and valorization of Mediterranean animal and plant genetic resources in agriculture, offer solutions for coping with the impacts of future climate change, providing an important contribution in addressing food and nutrition security while ensuring resilience of the production system. Through research and innovation, we are willing to contribute to the just transition towards a more inclusive, resilient, and green Mediterranean societies, together with other private and public sectors, since the SDG 17 is key, where cooperation is the key. The UN Food System Summit has shown that no one strategy fits all, and solutions shall be adequate to the local, regional context while maintaining the global commitment represented by Agenda 2030. Finally, I could conclude by saying that Mediterranean is dramatically affected by climate change and shall be a model for solving these challenges. All actors, including private, are needed. Research and innovation is fundamental and PRIMA can offer its platform as an instrument to implement and deploy further common projects and actions. Thank you so much.
Many thanks, Professor Eshinawi. Indeed, what's coming out today is that the Mediterranean is a model, and we are proving through all this partnership actually to be able to do a lot all together. Professor Riccaboni, you would like also to add some words from your side?
I was speaking on behalf of myself and Professor Riccaboni. That's why I took the 5 minutes.
Thank you very much to the PRIMA Foundation. Now, sorry, the line was coming and going, so maybe we just missed this important point. Now, let's conclude actually with two important partners and daily partners, I would say, of the UFM. I now give the floor to the Interreg Med. Mr. Cervelli, you have the floor.
Thank you, Ms. Sensi, dear Alessandra. Thank you for inviting us to represent the European Territorial Cooperation in this high-level event. Being Interreg Med, a program working on 2 languages, in French and English, I'm going to speak in French. Monsieur Mikos a mentionné peu avant mon intervention l'importance de la coopération au niveau central et au niveau des territoires, au niveau local. Je suis fier de représenter un programme qui travaille essentiellement avec les collectivités territoriales, avec des associations, avec des universités, des centres de recherche, avec des entreprises et des PME notamment. Donc, Interreg Med, c'est notamment l'exemple d'un programme qui traverse plusieurs territoires, du Portugal jusqu'à Chypre, en passant par les Balkans, focalisé dans le nord de la rive méditerranéenne, mais qui est capable aussi d'associer, de travailler, de se joindre à des partenariats avec la rive sud. Donc, nous sommes ouverts à un esprit de coopération, de collaboration, avec tout organisme, toute association qui est intéressée par le développement de la Méditerranée, notamment, évidemment, en sens de l'environnement. Déjà, sur la programmation, sur la période actuelle, 2014-2020, nous avions dédié environ 50%, 55% de nos ressources à l'environnement. Sous la prochaine programmation, 2021-2027, nous ferons de 80% des cofinancements sur l'environnement, ce qui signifie que nous allons dédier en gros environ 180-200 millions d'euros. Il s'agit de projets moyens d'1 million d'euros jusqu'à 3 millions d'euros qui peuvent associer entre 5 et 10 partenaires en provenance de toute la zone méditerranéenne, je le disais, avec des cofinancements directs, notamment pour les partenaires des pays de l'Union européenne, des pays des Balkans, mais il est possible de cofinancer aussi des dépenses de transport pour les pays associés, tels des pays tiers de la Méditerranée, donc de la rive sud. C'est un programme qui concentrera son action sur l'économie circulaire, sur la protection des ressources naturelles, sur les bassins de vie verts et d'une façon transversale, bien entendu, nous ne pourrons pas oublier le tourisme durable, ce qui représente le point central de beaucoup d'économies dans la Méditerranée. Ça, c'est pour les aspects thématiques. L'autre point essentiel de notre future mise en œuvre, c'est l'attention que nous portons aux travaux des transferts des résultats, de la capitalisation, de la gouvernance. Je l'ai déjà dit, nous voulons travailler, nous sommes ouverts à la coopération, à la coordination, à la coopération avec tous les acteurs qui peuvent intervenir en Méditerranée dans les sujets que nous traitons. Donc, pour nous, un pilier essentiel est représenté par la gouvernance. Nous avons déjà coopéré dans le passé avec les programmes de voisinage ENIMED, qui suivra mon intervention, nous voulons continuer sur cette voie aussi pour nous assurer la capacité qui est la nôtre d'élargir nos partenariats à toute la Méditerranée, nord et sud, est et ouest. Donc, pour nous, il est essentiel de continuer à dialoguer, à promouvoir le transfert des résultats dans tous les territoires, quels qu'ils soient, qui souhaitent contribuer et participer de nos résultats. Un mot pour terminer sur les calendriers. Nous allons lancer la prochaine programmation à Lisbonne le 2 décembre prochain. Donc le kick-off meeting qui démarrera officiellement la nouvelle période de programmation. Nous allons lancer les premiers appels de la prochaine période au cours du premier semestre 2022. Nous nous concentrerons d'abord sur les aspects de gouvernance, des coopérations, et ensuite nous passerons au premier appel thématique qui permettra, comme je l'ai déjà mentionné, à tous les acteurs éligibles au programme Interreg Euromed, ça c'est le nouveau nom du programme MED du futur, de s'associer, de constituer des partenariats, de promouvoir leurs idées pour un développement de l'environnement dans le sens que nous préfigurerons dans les cahiers des charges qui seront bientôt disponibles sur notre site pour faire face aux défis qui nous est commun en Méditerranée, notamment par rapport au changement climatique. Je vous remercie pour votre attention et pour l'invitation qui nous a permis d'illustrer ces propos. Merci beaucoup et bonne soirée. Au revoir.
Many thanks, Curzio, for sketching out actually the new phase of the program, actually stressing these two important dimensions, the territorial dimension as well as the larger participation of all the Mediterranean countries to the program. We now conclude actually with the last, but of course not the least, presentation by Antonella Giglio, who is the interim director of the CBC. Antonella, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues. It's a great honor for me to participate in today's discussion and have the opportunity to share with you some of the achievement of the ENI CBC Med program. I would like to express my sincere gratitude to the organizers, in particular the Egyptian authorities and the Secretariat of the Union for the Mediterranean, for the invitation to this event, which highlights the importance of developing synergies among the initiatives operating in the Mediterranean Sea Basin. In my speech, I will outline the main contribution provided by this program towards a green transition in the Mediterranean, and will then highlight its future perspectives for the new programming period 2021-2027. The Mediterranean region, which has been identified as a climate change hotspot, will see fierce heat waves, drought, and fires fed by rising temperatures, with several consequences for the well-being for our societies, economic development, and unprecedented loss of biodiversity. This means that we have no other choice than join our forces to pool resources and advance knowledge together to accelerate climate action in the Mediterranean region. Environmental sustainability is at the heart of the initiative that I represented today. The ENI CBC Med program, which is the largest cooperation platform in the Mediterranean, implemented under the cross-border component of the European Neighbourhood Instrument. With a budget of 209 million and 13 countries participated from both sides of the Mediterranean, ENI CBC aims to contribute to a more competitive, inclusive, innovative, and sustainable area. To achieve this objective, we currently support 80 projects involving 612 organizations among public institutions at the national and local level, sector agency, university and research center, private sector and NGO, following the principle of partnership and equal footing. Whether it's enhancing the reuse of wastewater for irrigation in agriculture, improving the energy performance of public buildings and schools, creating a culture of recycling and reuse among local communities, or protecting fragile coastal ecosystem, the program invests in contributing to address joint challenges at Mediterranean level with 25 projects specially dedicated to environmental conservation. Moreover, given transversal environment dimension, the greening moment also extends to other key sectors with a consistent number of projects seeking to reduce the environmental impact of the textile, fashion and tourist industries, facilitating the technology transfer of innovative clean tech, or train a new generation of young people based on green curricula. The program now is reaching its third edition, and it has already achieved an important extension of its cooperation area with the participation of two other countries, Algeria and Turkey, in addition of Cyprus, Egypt, France, Greece, Israel, Italy, Jordan, Lebanon, Malta, Palestine, Portugal, Spain, and Tunisia. Under the name NextMed, the new program officially enters in the Interreg community. This means a far approximation with those thematic priorities and technical rules set under the cohesion policy for the programs implemented with the internal borders of the community of the European Union. While the exact budget of the NextMed remains to be defined, important steps have already been completed in the drafting of its strategic framework. The common socio-economic and environment common challenges of the cooperation area have been identified through a comprehensive territorial analysis. Consultation at the national level have been carried out to identify those policy objectives and specific objectives among those set out in the Interreg regulation, deemed as more relevant in the context of the next program. The task force, which is the body in charge of designing the new program and composed of the institutional representative of the participating countries, have reached a preliminary and provisional agreement on the thematic framework for the new programming period. Under the policy objective 2, a greener, low-carbon transitioning towards a net zero carbon economy and resilient Mediterranean, the NextMed program will focus on four steps: the promotion of energy efficiency through the renovation of existing housing stock, climate change adaptation by fostering nature-based solutions, green infrastructures, biodiversity and ecosystem protection and conservation. Sustainable water management thanks to resource conservation, reuse, leakage reduction, the transition to a circular and resource-efficient economy, engaging communities and small-medium enterprises. Although the financial resources probably remain limited, considering the magnitude of the environment challenges to be addressed across the Mediterranean, we aim, through a balanced model of cooperation and valuable projects, to spark a positive momentum that can pave the way for the creation of a more resilient societies against climate change. Collaboration and cooperation with the peer initiatives implemented in the Mediterranean, which are represented in today's event, will continue to drive our mission and efforts. And so, if not now, when? Thank you for your attention.
Many thanks for these words. And really, with this final applause, we close this long but intense day where all the Mediterranean has been able really to gather together, to put together the most, let's say, positive energies and to prepare, let's say, for the next steps, which are indeed related to the implementation. So again, thank you to the countries, thank you to the partners, thank you to everybody for being here with us today. Today indeed will mark an important step in our next decade. So thank you very much to everybody, and I wish you a very good evening that we will spend together celebrating. Thank you. Bye.
Recording stopped.